Hello, everybody. Welcome to this new webinar, Five Pillars to Ensure Your Results. We're grateful to have all of you here. Thank you very much for attending. This is one of the webinars in English that we're holding this year, and we have a great presenter, which is Alejandra Zárate. Alejandra, welcome to this webinar.
Thank you, Genaro. Hello, everybody.
And in addition to what Ale is going to be sharing with us today, I want to share certain details about this webinar. We want to make this webinar active, so you can ask questions using the chat that you have in your panel of control. I will be consolidating all your questions. I will be sharing those questions or even comments to Ale, so we can have a very meaningful conversation, all of us together. In addition to that, if you're willing to appear live in this session, please raise your hand. That means I can open your microphone, and that also means that we're going to be listening to you, you will listen to us. Important thing, we are recording this webinar. Because we're recording this webinar, we're taking care of respecting your privacy. That's one of the reasons we're not going to be saying who's saying what, but we're going to be saying the questions and the comments, okay? Unless you let us know that, please. No? Say my name so I can say it, okay? So, introducing Ale. Alejandra, she's an industrial engineer. She's a trainer, consultant, and a bilingual certified coach. She's certified by GTC, she's certified by the Center for Coaching Certification, and also everything that she does in her coaching process is tied to the International Code of International Code Federation Code of Ethics. So in terms of her experience, she has been working with clients in Mexico and the United States. And what really motivates her is to make an impact on society through organizational growth. Ale, thank you very much for preparing this webinar for all our network. I'm sure we all will take great benefit from this.
Thank you very much, Genaro, for the presentation. I'm very happy to be part of the GTC webinars for this year. I'm very excited. And as you said before, it has been this wonderful path in which I have learned a lot from our clients' experience and about their best practices to achieve results and make personal development part of their daily lives. We have worked together with our clients shoulder to shoulder, and we have become aware of what their biggest challenges are. There are many reasons why most of us, and I'll include myself, do not achieve an objective to get to our goals. And one of the most common phrases I often hear is, I don't have time, things will get easier later on, I did not see this blocker coming, I depend on others to achieve my results, I don't see the point of why I started working on this in the first place. Even Marshall Goldsmith, leadership coach and writer that has worked with big, successful companies, has interesting insights about why we stop doing what we know we should be doing to get to our results. And this is why I started to dig in what have been like the most successful implementation processes that our clients have gone through. And through all of those experiences, I figured out that there are 5 pillars to ensure your results, which have served all of them and that we also use in our own methodologies and processes. Execution is easier when you have a firm base to start with. This is why it's called a pillar. And I hope that this information later on makes your life a little bit better and yourself a little bit happier.
And Ale, sharing some insights about what you're saying, we're all looking for results. I think it applies for everybody. And what I was thinking is that's the same thing that you were saying. It's the challenges that I'm having myself and the challenges that our clients have. So I think it's very relevant. I'm really looking forward to experience it.
Okay, so let's start. And the invitation for everybody that's joining this webinar is to have a piece of paper, a pen, a pencil, to write down your own ideas, your questions. and we will be very glad to answer them along the way or even at the end. So
Awesome.
to begin with, the first pillar. The first pillar is your internal compass. We all have a belief system, a value system that works as an internal compass in which we base our decisions and behaviors. So the first pillar is to define a vision and purpose of what you're doing. That, of course, relates and adds value, not just to your value system, but also to your life. So it is very important to define what is important to you. And why is it so important to figure out the why you're working for this goal? So the why, to explain a little bit better what is this about, I would like to use an example of Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. And in this movie, in Alice in Wonderland, there is one character, the Cheshire Cat, that commonly makes bold questions and statements to Alice in a way that kind of annoys her, you know, so philosophical. But this Cheshire Cat makes a point in one of the scenes where Alice doesn't know which way to take. So he asks, "Where do you want to go?" And she says, "Well, I don't know. I don't care where I go." And the cat answers, "Well, then it doesn't matter which way you take." So this is why it's very important to figure out what is this internal compass telling us? Where do we want to go? When we have a purpose and a clear why we are doing what we are doing, it makes sense to stay in the way of our goal, to stay in the path of execution. And to define a vision, a purpose that adds and, you know, makes your value system much greater. This is why it's so important to make sure that our goals are aligned with what is going to be adding value in our life. And I would like to share with you one of my clients' experiences. He had one of a very big challenge, which was to define a business and growth strategy. He had already started a project which had to grow as a business, and he had millions of doubts. He loved what he did, he had a clear purpose for what he was doing, and his project's mission was clear. And he found that through the project's mission, he could also live his purpose, his life purpose. And he knew that part of his vision was to grow and to become international. So it made sense to him to define a grow plan for his business. And when the value was clear and aligned with his goal, execution became natural. So what I've learned from this is that the most successful implementation plans are those that are carried out with your whole heart. And they are achieving the results like that, just like that. In having this first pillar clear, what is moving you, what objective will get you there and allow you to fulfill your purpose, it's very, very important. So many times, well, people ask, how do we define this? How do we define this purpose? And what I would like to share with you is through questions. Questions such as, how do you see yourself in the future? What are you doing in this future? How are you feeling? Where are you? What can you hear? What can you smell? Through questions, self-analysis is a very useful way to define this pillar, to keep them open-ended and make sure that they are promoting a deep digging in what you really want and facilitate introspection.
Yeah, and Ale, I think that internal exploration, it's not that easy. It sounds easy, but it requires to be in the right mood to be that insightful.
Yes, very, very.
Oh, well, for example, right now, what I was thinking is like, well, I'm going to grab a piece of paper and write down what comes to my mind with no stop. So I can make those ideas flow, because at the beginning are powerful open questions, but to
Yes.
answer requires time to think.
Yes, you require a lot of time and also a lot of effort, because like you said, these questions are not what we normally use to ask ourselves. And especially when it's a one-man job to do this, it's much harder. So what I would recommend is for you to start with one simple question and make sure your ideas flow. Keep an open mind in what you really want in this vision of yours, and imagine everything is possible. I'm sure through these deep digging, you can actually see, well, what is really important to me? What is something like a dream that I have? Is this something that I really want, that I really find value in doing this? And if the answer is yes, well, of course, that should be part of your plans. That should be part of the execution that you will be carrying out throughout the time to get there. So
what I find really cool here, Ale, it's how you're tying these to emotions and to our senses. For example, like after achieving what you want, what can you hear or what can you smell? I think that's powerful.
yes, it's part of living the whole experience, and making sure that it is possible for you to get there. So yeah, this open-ended questions, these are some examples, but of course we have a lot more. And this is a great way to start. So if you would like to write them down, please do so to keep exploring with yourselves. What is it that you really want? And once that you have the idea of what you really want, is start working on that. So I'm going to continue to the next pillar. And the second pillar is discipline of thought. I'm sure that most of us have heard that the mind's power is fascinating, and I truly believe that your mind believes what you reinforce. And I have experienced it. What you repeat to yourself is what stays. And the mind can be your best ally or your worst enemy. So the part that we decide to listen to is the difference between achieving our results or not. So in the first pillar, you already made this introspection about what is moving you, your vision, your purpose. Now, this second pillar is about how you are mentally preparing yourself to achieve your objective. A thought is a habit. So how are you mentally preparing yourself to execute? Sometimes the first ones to put down a challenge is ourselves, with statements such as, I don't have time, I don't feel I can do this, I'm not capable, I'm not prepared, I don't have what it takes, I don't know where to begin, I'm out of resources. And these are some of the main thoughts of challenges that our clients have faced and I have personally faced. So,
Ale,
yes?
so sorry for interrupting. What I was
No,
thinking
go ahead.
is that what examples do you have to share with the audience on discipline of thought?
Yes, the most important thing about working on discipline of thought is to make sure that these challenges that your mind is setting, you are actively working to 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 figure them out. For example, if your mind is saying, I don't have any time, well, how can I set the time to do this? To question yourself, to challenge yourself in another way. If your mind is saying, I'm not capable, well, what are my strengths? How will I work on my areas of opportunity? Make questions to yourself to explore solutions. How can you move forward? How can you make the time? How can you start? What are your strengths? How can you face challenges? What am I repeating to myself? And discipline of thought, it is a very hard work because it's work that we're doing with ourselves. And
Ale,
yes, go ahead.
please. Well, I was excited because we have a question.
Okay.
So this question says, I'm usually disciplined, but during stressful situations, I lose focus. What do you recommend?
Well, I can relate a lot with that, with the stressful situation. And one of the best practices I would like to share with this person is to take 5 to 10 minutes a day with a timer to identify what is on your mind. Sometimes we have a lot going on. Well, like this person said, we are living in a stressful situation, or we have a lot of issues to be concerned about. So take 5 to 10 minutes a day, put your timer, sit down in a quiet place, and just sit there. Observe or listen to what are the thoughts that come into your mind. What do you have in mind? Let thoughts come and go without changing them or engaging with them. Just let them be there. Set the timer, and once the timer goes off, write down what you thought of. This helps you identify what is on your mind. And another recommendation, especially when we're having these stressful situations, is to be kind to ourselves. Forgive ourselves. Our mind is super powerful, and everything we have on mind is useful. Well, in the end, our mind is always preparing ourselves for everything. And all the thoughts, all the habits that we have formed in our minds, well, they have a reason to be there. So forgive yourself, be kind to yourself, and let it go. Next time, you'll do better, I'm sure.
I like that one. I like that part.
And it's a hard work. I mean, it's very easily said, but it requires a lot. So keep working on that and move forward. I'm sure you'll get there.
Awesome.
Now, their third pillar is our toolbox. And in our toolbox is all those talents, abilities that will get to our results. Our toolbox is everything we do have to get to that goal, to get to that objective. We have an internal toolbox. We all have talents, abilities, competencies, and knowledge. And we also have an external toolbox, what the environment has to offer, the demographics, the politics, the network. So all of these resources we're going to use to get to our vision. For example, time to work on your objective, training, trying new things, expanding your comfort zone. Even money is part of what your toolbox. And your toolbox, this is very good news for everybody, is never empty. But if you have identified that you need a certain resource that you don't have to get to your goal, well, this is a very good chance to define what do you need. And in this part of what are your resources, I would like to keep on sharing with this experience that this coachee had. He was working to have his business growth plan. And he discovered that he didn't like to sell. He didn't feel comfortable doing that. And however, he had other abilities and knew a lot of people. So he had a network. He had a very interpersonal ability that helped him a lot. And he was great at engaging with other people. So he identified in his toolbox all of this, and he decided that he was not going to make the first contact with his prospects. He was going to use his network and then engage in a conversation and then develop a relationship with his prospects. So this was part of what would later become his plan. Which leads me to the fourth pillar. In this fourth pillar, which is the plan, Marshall Goldsmith, in various cast shows and books, said that the same person that is planning is different from the person that's executing. Why? Because we never expect to be tired, we'd never expect to get sick, or have billions of other plans. So what is important for this fourth pillar, the plan, is to consider that you can have all the correct ingredients, you can have clear steps, but what is most important is who is executing. Like when you're baking a cake, you can have everything that the recipe says that you need. But what is most important is who is cooking this cake. Why? Because the recipe doesn't consider the experience that you have in the kitchen, doesn't consider the time that you have or don't have. Even the recipe doesn't consider what flavors do you like. And this is very important to make a tailor-made plan. The recipe has to fit in with everything you have, with the resources that you have, the time that you have, the taste, what you like to eat, what you like to eat in a cake. So all of this is very important to consider. The tailor-made plan. Yes, I know.
Yes. No, I was going to, I was going to
I,
share
I,
with you
I
that,
gave you
no,
the
no,
breathing.
that we have, no, that we have a comment here that they
Hmm.
said, like, I really like the example of cooking. It's a great example. So it's a comment because we want to connect with everybody that is joining us today. So I wanted to share that. Thank you, Ali.
Okay.
Well, but now that we're talking about the tailored plan, I mean, what examples do you have for a
Okay.
tailored plan?
One of an examples is to make a, well, what does tailor-made mean? This means it's under my own times and terms, attainable and challenging goals, with a motivation and metric system that makes sense to me. For example, this same coachee that was developing his business growth plan, he decided that he didn't like long-term plans. So on one day he came to me and said, Ale, you're asking me to define a 1-year plan, and that seems like a long way from here, and I don't feel comfortable working because I don't know if I'm going to be alive in 1 year. So I don't like it. I don't feel comfortable. And he decided to set a metric system that made sense to him. He he set his own time, his own pace. He decided to set 3-month goals and define very specific actions to achieve those trimestral goals. And he also linked this plan that he had with his own motivators. He wanted to return home to his parents, and well, that required that he was already having money, having an income. So he said, well, if business is going well, if I'm actively working on the actions that I set, that means I'm growing, business is growing. And if this happens, I'll return home. That is my motivation system. And to make a tailor-made plan, these are some of the questions that can help you identify what is it that works for you. For example, what are the tools that you feel more comfortable with? How will you follow up on that plan? What are your motivations? What are your strengths? What else is important to you to consider in this plan? And how is your time? Very, very important. What is your time?
Hmm. Yep. And I'm just wondering what's the last pillar.
The last pillar is last but not least,
Uh-huh.
execution. So for this fifth pillar, execution, staying focused in action, which can be very hard for most of us. And so far, you have already identified, you have already worked in what is motivating you, making your mind your best ally, knowing what you need and working actively to get everything, all the resources that you'll be needing, and you have a clear plan. And for execution, I would like to share with you 3 best practices. Uh, I wrote a newsletter on January, February, that in which I consolidated all of the best practices that our clients use to stay focused in execution. And part of those 10 best practices, I'll be sharing with you today 3. The first one, to schedule your plan. Once you're executing on your commitments, surely many things will happen that you did not anticipate. So schedule few change commitments, measure your times, and plan better next time. But start practicing on scheduling your plan. The second is implementation partners. Implementation partners are those allies, people who are a support trust group that will keep you focused, that will drive you to achieve your goals. And last, update your goals. It is very easy, and it has happened to me several times, to lose in the day-to-day work. And I have heard this is a great challenge, right? You stay focused on your day-to-day work, on the operations. So establish different checkpoints throughout the year to go back to your objectives and validate how much sense are they still making. And it is, well, like I said before, right? If what has worked so far and what can you do differently from this point forward. So these are 3 of the 10 best practices that I shared on the newsletter, and I'm sure that many of us have gone through these challenges, that this is why I chose these 3.
And this last best practice, well, the third one that you're sharing, I think has a lot of value because a lot of times it has happened to me too that there is a goal and where I'm so focused on a goal that I forgot to see the whole picture. And once I see the whole picture, it gives me guidance to readjust the goal because probably that goal that I imagined at the beginning evolved. And it's not exactly that goal anymore. It evolved to something different. So just to stop and review, I think can help us get closer to our goals.
Yes, yes, yes. That is a very interesting experience. And thank you for sharing. That is very, I can relate to that too.
And
Updating
we
your
have
goals.
another question. We have another question.
Go
This
ahead.
person is saying, many of my goals are shared objectives with other people. What can I do when they are not working on their part?
Okay. So for that part, when there are shared goals with other people, what I can say works best is to communicate with your team. These 5 pillars have worked for personal goals, professional goals, and team goals. To define what is the clear purpose of what you're working, make sure that your team, like Genaro said, understands the whole picture and understands the purpose of what you're working for. To make sure that the inner blockers that they have, what are they feeling, what are they thinking, they're actively working to overcome those challenges, that you have all the resources, that your team has all the resources that you need, that there is a clear plan. Make sure that your team understands exactly what is expected of them, their specific actions that they will develop, their limit time to develop these objectives, and make sure that you are communicating, that you are making sure that you're making progress in these goals. I know it's very hard, especially when there are different personalities involved, but make sure that you keep focus on all of these pillars to go forward with your goals.
Good.
So I would like to go forward with the debrief of the 5 pillars. I know that this has been a lot of information, and just what are the 5 pillars? Your internal compass. Make sure that you have clearly identified what moves you, what is motivating you. You're disciplining your mind, disciplining your thought. You're changing habits. So I know this can be hard at sometimes, but making sure that you are changing. Your toolbox, you have identified a toolbox that you'll be needing, all the resources, and you're actively working to get all of the resources that you need. The plan, a tailored made plan to finally execute. So
Good.
yeah.
Good, Ale, and we're running out of time. And you mentioned an author, and I think that you're willing to share a book with the audience as a
Yes, yes,
resource.
yes, yes. Yes, I mentioned throughout this webinar, Marshall Goldsmith. He has a lot of information that you can access. He has his a web page and has a lot of cast shows. And this book, Triggers, is what it also talks about this. What are you doing, and what is getting you to achieve your results? So I would like to recommend you this book.
Yeah, it's a great book. I have read that. And Ale, thank you very much. I know we have some time for questions, so I just want to make sure we have a couple of questions through the webinar. I just want to make sure that the rest of the audience, if you're willing to ask something else, this is the time. And in the meantime, you can see in the screen also Alejandra's email. It's Ale Zarate, Ale Zarate, because we're in English right now, at gtcconsult.com. And if you have more questions or there is something, if you would like Ale to send you the link to the blog that she wrote about the other 7 best practices, just the 10 best practices, correct, Ale?
Yes,
Just
10 best
yes,
practices.
yes. And so if you would like to access that information, so she can send it to you. So far, Ale, we don't have additional questions. I really appreciate all of you for being here. For the ones that are here, as I mentioned at the beginning, you will have access to the recording tomorrow. I'm responsible for sending that link tomorrow. And also, I'll be sending a link to our next webinar. The next webinar in English will be a fun one because I'm writing a book that I'm going to be publishing in June. And that webinar, it will talk about this book, which is called Do. And I'm saying Do, not Do, because it's a word in Japanese that means the way, the truth, the path. So the book is The Path for Continuous Growth. It's about finding that inner motivation and how to find that mindset to achieve what we want. I'm doing it from a very particular perspective, which is my experience in traditional Japanese martial arts. So there are some stories about it, but everything tied to business and especially to leadership development and personal accountability. I'm going to be also talking about a great tool there, which is the Personal Strategy Canvas. And I'll send the link also for that webinar for the ones who joined this one, as well as the recording that I mentioned previously. And it will be amazing if you can join me there. It's going to be great information. Ale, thank you very much for sharing all this wisdom with all of us.
No, thank you. This is our client's wisdom.
Yeah. And thank you all the audience for being here with us. And they're saying good job. Thank you very much. Bye bye. Okay. Bye bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know it was 30 minutes. Bye bye.
Bye bye.